Okay, so get this. Hollywood just had, like, its biggest Thanksgiving weekend ever.
Really?
Yeah, ever. We're talking a collective sigh of relief coming from movie theaters, like, everywhere.
Yeah.
I know you follow the box office numbers pretty closely, so
Oh,
you know what a roller coaster it's been. But this weekend,
yeah.
they just blew it out of the water.
Oh, wow.
And we're diving deep into Hawaii.
It's pretty remarkable
Yeah.
when you consider how dismal things were this time last year.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about a small uptick. This is like a complete
Cold.
reversal of fortune.
Yeah. And this turnaround is largely thanks to three major films.
Okay.
Moana 2, Wicked, and Gladiator 2.
Okay.
But one of them just really took the crown
Right.
and raked in a truly staggering amount of cash.
Well, considering we're talking about record-breaking Thanksgiving box office,
Yeah.
I would say it has something to do with a certain Polynesian princess returning to the big screen.
You got it. Moana 2 absolutely crushed it.
I figured,
$221 million domestically.
wow,
In just 5 days.
geez,
That's the biggest 5-day opening ever.
wow,
And globally, they're already at $386 million.
wow,
It's only been out a week.
those are the kind of numbers that make studio executives do a happy dance.
Right.
This isn't just a hit for Disney.
Right.
This is a lifeline after a string of flops they had earlier this year. Remember Lightyear?
Oh, yeah.
Ouch. This is a whole different story.
It really is. Think about this. Moana 2 was almost a Disney Plus movie.
Oh, really?
Can you imagine if they'd gone that route?
Wow.
What a different world we'd be talking about.
Right. We're seeing this really fascinating tug of war between theatrical releases and streaming.
Right.
And it makes you wonder, are studios starting to realize that some films just need that big screen magic
Yeah.
to truly resonate with audiences?
Moana 2 certainly makes a strong case for it.
Yeah, it does.
Now, Wicked might not have reached those astronomical heights, but it's still sitting pretty in second place, with a very respectable $117.5 million for the 5-day weekend. That brings its global total to $359.2 million.
What's remarkable about Wicked is that it's already become the highest-grossing Broadway adaptation ever domestically.
So defying gravity in more ways than one, right?
It really is.
But there's a catch. Wicked came with a hefty price tag.
A hefty price tag is an understatement.
Okay.
Splitting it into two parts meant double the production cost.
Oh, right, yeah.
And musicals are already notoriously expensive to make. To put it in perspective, Wicked's budget
Wow.
dwarfs even the most lavish Broadway productions
Great.
like The Lion King or Hamilton.
Wow, okay. So even with those impressive numbers, Wicked still has a long way to go before it truly sings in the black.
Yeah.
Which brings us to another big budget sequel that's
Oh.
hoping to replicate the success of its predecessor,
Okay.
Gladiator II.
Right. Gladiator II took third place, bringing in $44 million over 5 days for a global total of $320 million. Now, that sounds good on paper.
Yeah,
But
but
like-
with a budget that rivals Wicked, it's got some serious work to do if it wants to be considered a real box office champion.
Yeah.
It seems sequels are a bit of a gamble these days, don't they?
Absolutely are. You're banking on the love for the original
Yeah.
to translate into ticket sale.
Right.
But audiences are savvy. They can smell a cash grab a mile away.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of cash, let's zoom out and look at the big picture for a second.
Okay.
This Thanksgiving weekend saw a total box office haul of $422 million.
That's not just a win. That's the biggest Thanksgiving box office of all time.
Wow.
To really grasp the magnitude of this, we have to remember that 2023
Yeah,
was a graveyard for theatrical releases.
right.
This time last year, the numbers were abysmal.
Right.
This year's success is a monumental shift.
A phoenix rising from the ashes, you might say. But beyond those three big hitters, were there any other films that managed to catch your eye?
Well, Red One certainly made some noise,
Yeah.
even if it wasn't quite the blockbuster Dwayne Johnson was probably hoping for.
Right. Red won The Rock as Santa's head of security.
Yeah.
It definitely had that event movie vibe. It did okay, but given its budget, maybe not as okay as they were aiming for.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. Then we have The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, a much smaller film that seems to be quietly winning over audiences.
Yeah.
It proves that amidst all the superhero epics and CGI spectacles, there's still a place for heartfelt stories.
I think that variety is really key here, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
This Thanksgiving weekend offered a little something for everyone,
Right.
which is probably a big reason why those overall numbers are so impressive. But let's delve a little deeper into what this means for you, the listener.
Okay.
Are you planning to see any of these films?
Yeah.
What kind of movies do you think Hollywood should be focusing on to keep this momentum going?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
This Thanksgiving weekend was a huge victory, but is it just a blip or a sign of a real comeback? What do you think it'll take for Hollywood to keep audiences coming back for more?
Yeah, it's interesting to consider what this means for the industry as a whole.
Right.
This weekend was a huge win, sure,
Yeah.
but is it a sign of like a lasting shift?
Right.
Or are we just riding this wave of holiday cheer?
Right. That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
Is Hollywood really back?
Yeah.
Or was this just a temporary sugar rush?
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen these flashes of brilliance before, but they haven't always translated into long-term success.
Exactly. It's like they catch lightning in a bottle, but then they struggle to replicate it. I think the key is to understand what made this weekend work and see if those elements can be applied to future releases.
Okay, so let's play armchair analyst for a bit.
Okay.
What do you think worked? Where do we even start unpacking this?
Well, I think one of the biggest factors was just the sheer diversity of offerings.
Yeah.
We had something for everyone.
A family-friendly musical adventure, a big-budget fantasy epic, a gritty historical sequel, a holiday action comedy, and a heartwarming family drama.
It was like a cinematic buffet,
It was.
and audiences were hungry for it all.
Yeah.
But variety alone isn't enough, is it?
No,
Those movies also had to be good.
absolutely. You can have the most diverse slate of films in the world, but if they're not well made,
Yeah.
audiences just won't bite.
Right.
Moana 2 is like a perfect example of how to do it right. It took everything people loved about the original
Yeah.
and just built upon it.
Uh-huh.
And they created a sequel that felt both familiar and fresh.
And they didn't shy away from exploring deeper themes either.
Right.
That's what really struck me about Moana 2. It wasn't afraid to tackle issues of identity, environmentalism, and even grief.
Right. It managed to entertain and provoke thought at the same time, which is a rare feat for any film,
Yeah.
let alone a sequel aimed at a family audience.
Especially a sequel.
And it's worth noting that this film almost went straight to Disney+.
Oh, absolutely. I'm still wrapping my head around that.
Really?
If Moana 2 had gone the streaming route, this whole conversation would be completely different.
Imagine that. A record-breaking Thanksgiving weekend without its biggest player.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder of the power of the theatrical experience. Moana 2 was designed for the big screen.
Yeah.
The sweeping visuals, the immersive sound, the communal experience of sharing those gasps and laughs with a packed audience.
Right.
That's something you just can't replicate at home.
You really can't. It makes you appreciate the artistry and the craftsmanship that goes into creating these cinematic worlds.
Uh-huh.
But what about the other films?
Yeah.
Do you think they were able to capture that same magic?
Wicked certainly had its moments of grandeur.
Yeah.
It was visually stunning.
Yeah.
The costumes were extravagant, and the musical numbers were, for the most part, incredibly well staged.
I have to admit, I got chills during that Defying Gravity scene.
Yeah.
But Wicked had a lot to live up to, right?
It did.
It's one of the most beloved musicals of all time.
Yeah.
And splitting it into two parts only amplified the pressure.
No doubt about it.
Right.
And I think that's where Wicked stumbles a bit.
Okay.
It felt a bit too safe,
Okay.
too beholden to the source material.
Yeah.
It lacked that spark of originality
Yeah.
that Moana 2 had in spades.
So maybe that's another lesson for Hollywood.
Maybe.
Don't be afraid to take risks,
Yeah,
even with beloved properties.
right.
Sometimes the biggest rewards come from pushing boundaries and subverting expectations.
It's a delicate balance for sure.
It is.
You alienate your core audience and you're sunk,
Right.
but you play it too safe, and you risk ending up with a product that feels derivative and uninspired.
Which brings us to Gladiator II,
Right.
a film that seemed determined to recapture the glory of the original,
Yeah.
but maybe fell a little short.
Gladiator 2 is an interesting case. It had all the ingredients for success.
Yeah.
A respected director, a talented cast, a built-in fan base, and yet it felt strangely hollow,
Yeah.
lacking the emotional weight and thematic depth of its
I
predecessor.
think it suffered from sequelitis.
I think so too.
It was trying so hard to recapture the magic of the original
Yeah.
that it forgot to carve out its own identity.
It's like they were trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It's a shame because the potential was there,
Yeah.
but ultimately it felt like a pale imitation of its predecessor.
So another lesson for Hollywood.
Yeah.
Sequels need to stand on their own 2 feet.
Right.
They can't just coast on the legacy of the original. They need to
Mhm.
bring something new to the table, a
Right.
fresh perspective,
Yeah.
a compelling reason for their existence.
And that brings us back to the question we posed earlier.
Right.
What does this all mean for the future of filmmaking?
Yeah.
Can Hollywood sustain this momentum?
Right.
Or are we just witnessing like a fleeting moment of triumph?
I think the answer lies in understanding the lessons of this Thanksgiving weekend.
Okay.
Hollywood needs to embrace diversity. Uh-huh.
Take creative risks.
Yeah.
Prioritize quality storytelling.
Right.
And remember the power of the theatrical experience.
If they can do that, then I think the future of cinema is bright.
Yeah.
But if they fall back into old habits,
Right.
churning out formulaic sequels and prioritizing profit over artistry, then this moment of success will fade as quickly as it arrived.
And that would be a real tragedy. Because as this weekend proved, there's still a hunger for great stories told well on the big screen. And that hunger, I believe, is something worth fighting for.
I couldn't agree more. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about some of the smaller films that managed to carve out a space for themselves amidst all the blockbuster frenzy.
Okay.
Specifically, the best Christmas pageant ever.
Okay, yes. The best Christmas pageant ever. It's heartwarming. It's funny. It's got a great message about the true meaning of Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a testament to the fact that sometimes the simplest stories can be the most powerful. Absolutely. The best Christmas pageant ever is a reminder that not every film needs to be a CGI spectacle or a superhero epic to resonate with audiences. Sometimes all it takes is a good story well told to capture the hearts and minds of viewers.
And in a weekend dominated by big-budget sequels and franchise fare, the best Christmas pageant ever offered a breath of fresh air, a reminder that there's still room for smaller, character-driven stories in the cinematic landscape.
And its success is encouraging, don't you think?
Yeah.
It suggests that audiences are hungry for diverse storytelling,
Yeah.
for films that offer a different kind of experience, a different kind of emotional journey.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder to Hollywood that they don't need to rely solely on big-budget tentpoles to succeed. Sometimes the most impactful stories come from unexpected places, from filmmakers with a vision and a passion for their craft.
And those filmmakers, I believe, are the future of cinema.
Right.
They're the ones who will push boundaries and challenge conventions and remind us of the power of storytelling to connect us, inspire us, and make us feel alive.
Beautifully said. But let's circle back to those big-budget blockbusters for a moment.
Okay.
Red One, starring Dwayne Johnson, had a lot going for it.
It did.
A holiday theme, a massive marketing campaign,
Uh-huh.
and The Rock himself.
Right. And it was a success. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It made money, but I think it's fair to say that it didn't quite reach the stratospheric heights that some were predicting.
It felt like they were trying to launch the next big holiday franchise,
Yeah.
but something didn't quite click.
Right.
Was it the story, the tone? Maybe audiences just weren't ready for The Rock to be Santa's head of security?
It's hard to say for sure. I think part of the problem might have been that it was trying to do too much.
Okay.
It was an action movie, a comedy, a family film, and a holiday adventure all rolled into one.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you try to be everything to everyone,
Yeah.
you end up being nothing to anyone.
That's a good point. Red One felt a little overstuffed, a little too eager to please. It lacked the focus and clarity of purpose that we saw in Moana 2, and even Wicked.
And I think that lack of focus ultimately hurt it at the box office.
Right.
It's a shame because there were some genuinely entertaining moments, and Dwayne Johnson was, as always, incredibly charismatic.
Right.
But it just didn't quite come together as a cohesive whole.
So another lesson for Hollywood?
Yeah.
Simplicity can be a virtue.
Yeah.
Sometimes the most effective stories are the ones that focus on a single idea,
Right.
a single emotion,
Mhm.
a single character arc.
That's so true. It's easy to get caught up in trying to create these sprawling, multi-layered narratives.
Yeah.
But sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that cut to the core of the human experience.
And those stories, I believe, are the ones that will endure.
Yeah.
The ones that will continue to resonate with audiences long after the credits roll.
I agree.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be celebrating, the power of stories to move us, to inspire us, to challenge us. And that power, I believe, is what will ultimately guide Hollywood towards a brighter future.
You know, it's funny, we talk about these massive budget films,
Yeah.
The marketing blitzes the star power.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it always comes back to the stories, doesn't it?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's the emotional connection
Right.
that keeps audiences coming back for more.
And that's what's so fascinating about this Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah.
We saw such a range of storytelling, from the heartwarming simplicity of the best Christmas pageant ever
Right.
to the epic scope of Moana 2.
And each film, in its own way, tapped into something universal,
Right.
something that resonated with audiences on like a deeper level.
Speaking of Moana 2, let's dive a little deeper into its success.
Oh, okay.
Because this wasn't just a win for Disney.
Right.
This was like a statement.
It was.
Remember, this was almost a Disney Plus release.
Right, and that decision could have had massive ripple effects throughout the industry.
Yeah.
Imagine if Moana 2 had bypassed theaters and gone straight to streaming.
It's crazy.
Would other studios have followed suit?
Right.
Would we even be having this same conversation about the resurgence of movie theaters?
I don't know. Moana 2 made it very clear.
Yeah.
There's still a huge appetite for big, bold cinematic experiences that you can only get in a theater.
And it wasn't just the spectacle.
Right.
Moana 2 also demonstrated the power of, thoughtful, character-driven storytelling.
It did.
It tackled some surprisingly complex themes for a family film.
We're talking about environmentalism, grief,
Yeah.
the weight of legacy,
Right.
issues that resonate with audiences of all ages.
Uh-huh.
And it did it all without sacrificing the humor and the heart that made the original so beloved.
It's a masterclass in balancing entertainment with substance.
Totally.
And I think that's a lesson that Hollywood would be wise to heed.
Okay, so we've talked about the power of Moana 2.
Yeah.
But what about Wicked?
Oh.
It had the brand recognition, the star power, the visual spectacle.
Right.
What do you think contributed to its slightly less impressive but still successful performance?
Well, Wicked is a beloved musical, no doubt.
Yes.
But I think the decision to split it into two parts might have been a gamble that didn't quite pay off.
You think it might have alienated some fans
Possibly.
who felt like they were being nickel and dimed?
And creatively, it's always a challenge to adapt a stage production to the big screen.
It is.
You have to strike a balance between honoring the source material
Right.
and creating something that feels cinematic.
You can't just film the stage show
Right.
and expect audiences to be satisfied. You have to translate it, reimagine it, give it like a new life.
And I think Wicked struggled to find that balance.
Yeah.
It felt a little too stagey at times, a little too beholden to the Broadway production.
So maybe another lesson for Hollywood.
Maybe.
When adapting beloved properties, don't be afraid to take risks.
Right.
Put your own stamp on it. Make it your own.
Exactly. Now let's talk about Gladiator II.
Oh.
It had a lot to live up to.
For sure.
The original Gladiator was a cultural phenomena, a masterpiece of epic storytelling.
And this sequel, well, it didn't quite reach those same heights, did it?
It's tough to follow in the footsteps of a giant. And I think Gladiator II suffered from the weight of expectations.
It did.
It felt a little too familiar, a little too derivative.
It's like they were trying to recapture lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
But the magic just wasn't there.
It's a reminder that sequels need to offer something more than just a rehash of the original.
Right.
They need to have their own story to tell.
Yeah, their own reason for existing.
Right.
And that brings us to like a crucial question.
Okay.
What does this Thanksgiving weekend tell us about the future of Hollywood?
Yeah.
Is this a sign of a true resurgence?
Right.
Or just a fleeting moment of success?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a sign that audiences are craving the shared experience of cinema,
Yeah.
the magic of seeing a great story unfold on the big screen.
But it's also a reminder that Hollywood needs to step up its game.
It does.
Audiences are savvier than ever. They're demanding quality originality.
Right.
And stories that resonate on a deeper level.
They want to be transported.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be challenged. They want to be entertained.
And if Hollywood can deliver on those expectations, then I think the future is incredibly bright.
I agree. This Thanksgiving weekend was like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
A reminder of the power of cinema to connect us, to move us, to inspire us.
Yeah.
And as we head into the new year, let's hope that Hollywood takes those lessons to heart and delivers a year filled with cinematic experiences that will stay with us long after the credits roll.
Beautifully said.
For more entertainment news, subscribe to The Hollywood Reposter.